Think about your favorite footballer at their best, the pace, the sharpness, the way they made everything look effortless. And then think about the moment it stopped. Not an injury, not a scandal, just gone. The thing that made them special disappeared almost overnight. Now think about the opposite. The veteran everyone wrote off. The player who was supposed to be finished. Who suddenly became the best player on the pitch at 34. Who got smarter, sharper, and more decisive every single season. Both things happen in football all the time, and almost nobody has ever properly explained why. This is the real reason some footballers get better with age and others collapse. First, you need to understand what your body does as a footballer gets older. At 23, the average professional is at the absolute peak of their physical output. Sprint speed is at its highest. Recovery between efforts is at its fastest. Explosive power, that ability to go from standing to full speed in 3 steps, is at its maximum. Sports scientist Dr. Tim Mayer, Chief Medical Officer of the German Football Association, calls this the physical peak window. The years between 22 and 26, when the body does more of what football demands than it will ever do again. And then it starts to change. From 27 onwards, sprint speed drops by roughly 1% every year. Explosive power follows the same path. Recovery between high-intensity efforts takes longer. These changes are small at first. You cannot see them from the stands. But they are real. And they are consistent. And for players whose entire game is built on physical weapons, raw pace, explosive acceleration, the ability to outrun defenders, the moment those weapons begin to fade, everything starts to unravel. There is no replacement for pace if pace is the only thing you have. But here is where the story gets genuinely surprising. The footballers who get better with age are not the ones who fight the physical decline. They are the ones who replace it with something the body never loses. Something that only gets stronger the older you get. Cognitive intelligence. Pattern recognition. The ability to read a game 2 or 3 seconds before it happens and be in exactly the right place without ever needing to sprint to get there. Sports neuroscientist Dr. Daniel Levitin, whose research on expertise and the aging brain has been applied across elite sport, calls this the cognitive compensation effect. As physical attributes decline, the brain compensates by becoming dramatically more efficient at reading situations and making decisions. A 32-year-old footballer who has played 1,500 professional matches has seen almost every situation the game can produce. Their brain does not need to think about what to do. It already knows. It has seen it 1,000 times. And it begins to move the body into the right position before the conscious mind has even registered what is happening. Think of it this way. A 22-year-old sees a defender coming and reacts. A 34-year-old sees the same defender coming and has already moved before the defender even knew they were going to press. This is why the greatest playmakers and midfielders in football history almost always peak in their late 20s and early 30s. The game they play is a thinking game. It rewards experience above athleticism, and experience only accumulates with time. Now think about the players who collapse early, the ones who are extraordinary at 21 and ordinary at 27. The pattern is almost always identical. They were built on one physical weapon: pace, power, explosive movement, the ability to do something physically that defenders simply could not handle. And when that weapon starts to fade, when they are no longer quite fast enough to beat the last defender, no longer quite explosive enough to create the half-yard of space, their entire game falls apart. Because they never needed to develop anything else. They were always fast enough. Until suddenly they were not. Sports psychologist Dr. Jared Jordet, whose research on decision-making in elite football is among the most cited in the field, calls this the single-weapon trap. Players who dominate through one physical attribute in youth football often never develop the broader football intelligence that keeps a career going beyond the physical peak. They are brilliant early. And then the game catches up with them. The players who avoid this trap share one thing in common. They were never the fastest or the most physically dominant player at any level of their development. They always had to think their way through matches. They always had to find space through intelligence rather than speed. And because of that, by the time they reached 30, their brain was doing things their body never could. There is one more factor that almost nobody talks about: injury. Dr. Mayer's research on career longevity identifies a consistent pattern. Players who suffer significant muscle injuries, especially hamstring tears, before the age of 25 show a much higher rate of early decline than players who reach 25 without serious damage. The reason is biological. Muscle fibers that tear and repair do not return to exactly their original state. The repaired tissue is slightly less elastic, slightly less explosive, slightly more vulnerable to the next injury. A player who tears their hamstring at 22 and again at 24 is not the same athlete at 26 that they would have been without those injuries. This is why some players do not decline gradually. They collapse suddenly. The damage accumulates invisibly over years. And then one season, without any obvious explanation, everything changes. The footballers who age well are the ones who were never relying on the things that time always takes away. They were always thinking faster than they were running. They understood the game so deeply that when their body slowed down, their mind more than made up for it. And the ones who collapse early were never really playing football. They were playing athleticism. They were doing something physical that defenders could not handle. And when the physical advantage disappeared, there was nothing underneath it. The next time you watch a 33-year-old veteran play the best football of their career, you are not watching someone beat time. You are watching someone whose brain finally caught up with everything their body learned across 15 years of professional football. And the next time you watch a 25-year-old who was once unstoppable become ordinary, you are not watching bad luck. You are watching the single weapon trap, playing out exactly as the science always said it would. If this changed the way you see football, hit the like button. It genuinely helps more people find this channel. And if you want the real story behind the moments everyone else misses, subscribe. There is a lot more where this came from.